All right, it is time to get back on track. I've taken off the last week or two of 2015 from doing the weekly podcast for the holidays because Christmas Day and New Year's Day both fell on Fridays, which is when I normally record the video. Next thing you know, it's January 29th and another month has gone by. So I think it's about time we start doing the almost internet famous weekly TechSpective happy hour once again. So here we are. I should come clean and let you know that I actually recorded one last week, but made the rookie mistake again of not double checking the microphone settings, and in the end had a wonderful, wise, exciting, just probably the best episode I've ever recorded, just without sound. And last week I didn't feel the motivation to start over and re-record the whole thing, so I decided to just put it off until this week. So here we are. So this week, I don't know if you remember me talking about this before, but I was never really a beer fan, and when I was in the Air Force and when I was in England, everyone was drinking beer. Mostly your Bud Lights, Miller Lights, whatever. But when in England, you do as the English do, which is drink Guinness. And I didn't want to drink Guinness. I did not like it at all. Didn't care for it. Couldn't understand room temperature beer. Couldn't understand dark beer. But now that's totally flipped around for me. Where I can still drink. I can drink a Budweiser or a Miller Lite or a Michelob or whatever, Coors, but I prefer the dark beers. So we're gonna just do happy hour with Guinness. So and see, now I appreciate it. I keep saying I want to visit England again sometime, and so now when I go back to England, I'll actually be able to appreciate Guinness. So I got that going for me. So let's talk about some stuff, but I should also preface with, in the course of the last 6 weeks, excuse me, just getting over a cold. In the course of the last 6 weeks, I kind of reviewed what I've been doing with the weekly podcast and thought about what I want to be doing with it, and also looked at some of the feedback I've gotten from viewers to try and figure out how to proceed and how to make it worth my time and worth your time. So step one, I decided that it's still happy hour, and I will still do a featured beverage of the week. I'm going to use it as my excuse to try different beers and alcoholic beverages and kick off the weekend. So it's still going to be happy hour, and that's still going to happen. But I am going to stop pretending to be a beer aficionado, and I'm not gonna sit there and say, well, it's got kind of a nutty flavor with kind of an aroma of lavender. That's not me. It's either I like it or I don't like it. And anyway, the beverage part isn't the important part. We're here to talk tech. So you drink whatever beverage you want. I'll drink whatever beverage I'm having that week, and we'll all be happy. Step 2. I decided that the blog posts on TechSpective are already on TechSpective. If you subscribe to the newsletters, you've already gotten a newsletter about those blog posts. If you pay attention to the site, you've already seen those blog posts. If you follow me on Facebook and Twitter, you've already seen those blog posts. So I don't really need to spend time on this podcast telling you what you can already read in the blog posts. Assumedly, if you were interested in those topics and interested in those blog posts, you would just go read them, or you would have already read them, one or the other. So I'm not going to not talk about them per se, but I'm not going to talk about them by just rehashing what's already in the blog post, just so I can verbally say what I already wrote. So it's going to be a little more laid back. It'll be a little more laid back this year in terms of the beverage part of it, and it'll be a little bit more laid back in terms of what we talk about with technology. So the few things that I would like to talk about from technology perspective from this week are basically all sort of Microsoft related. Earlier this week there was the story about Microsoft adding the ability for Cortana to scan your email, analyze your emails, and pick out the places where you've promised to do something, and then prompt you to say, hey, would you like to set a reminder for that? So, for example, you say, you send an email to your boss and you say, I'll have that PowerPoint presentation to you by Friday. Or you send an email to your daughter's school teacher and say, that you promise you'll bring, chips and soda for the class party next Monday. Well, Cortana now is going to be able to look at that and be smart enough to say, Tony just told someone he would do something on Monday. Or Tony just told someone he would do something by Friday. I'm going to ask Tony if he'd like to be reminded about that. So it's really kind of cool. I mean, it's part of this evolution where, when Apple first brought Siri on the scene, it was kind of cool as a novelty, but all it really was a voice interaction system of doing things that you could already do, sort of. I mean, so, instead of, opening the app, you would say, hey, Siri, open the app, or whatever. But there wasn't really anything proactive about it. Google came along and raised the bar with Google Now. So Google Now got a little smarter and said, I'm going to look at your location, and I'm going to look at your calendar. And your calendar says you have an appointment in downtown Houston at 2 p.m., but you're still in Conroe. So I'm going to let you know, hey, you should probably leave because it's going to take you a while to get down to Houston. And I might even look at the traffic. So Google Now got smarter about being proactive, so it looks at your calendar and it figures out where you're supposed to be, and then it looks at the traffic and figures out how long it's going to take you to get there, so that it can proactively act as your, like a personal assistant really should, and say, hey, dude, you should leave because you're going to be late. So that's the kind of the Google Now aspect. And then, Microsoft jumped on board with Cortana. Siri also, kind of caught up to where they now look at, they're able to kind of pull things like flight information, concert information out of emails, out of confirmation messages that you've gotten, and automatically, remind you, automatically put those things in your calendar, automatically say, hey, your flight is delayed, whatever. So those things have gotten smarter, and that's cool. But I like that, I like this new aspect of Cortana too, and I think that they're just going to keep adding stuff. They're going to, the artificial intelligence bar is going to keep getting raised, and and making that virtual assistant more like the end goal, which, in my opinion, is something closer to Jarvis from Iron Man. Tony Stark's Jarvis, where Jarvis is not just a voice interaction for a computer system. Jarvis knows Tony Stark better than Tony Stark knows Tony Stark. Jarvis knows what Tony Stark's allergic to. Jarvis knows what kind of music Tony Stark likes. Jarvis knows, Tony Stark's medical history. Jarvis knows, everything that about Tony Stark, and is an intelligent enough artificial intelligence to proactively act on that knowledge and do things automatically for you, which is so I think that's where we're headed, slowly but surely, and it seems like we will eventually get there. So I thought that new feature of Cortana sounds pretty cool. It is it's yet again one of those areas where some people will freak out. Some people will say, well, you're violating my privacy. I don't want your virtual assistant AI scanning my email. I don't want you to know what my calendar says. I don't want you to know where I'm at. And that's fine. I mean, you can turn features off. You can disable all that stuff. You don't have to share your information with Cortana or with Microsoft. You just give up those features and capabilities. It's a trade-off. So the convenience and the what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. The impact that has on you to be able to have your computer help you, help set reminders so that you keep your promises and the commitments that you make, and the ability for your smartphone to know where you're at right now and where you need to be an hour from now, so that it can direct you when to leave in order to get there based on the traffic right now. Those are cool features, in my opinion. Those are cool features I want. And if you want those features, you have to be willing to share that information. Now, it doesn't have to be with Microsoft, because like I said, you've got Google Now, you've got Siri with Apple, you've got Cortana with Microsoft. All three of them operate on basically the same premise, which is you have to share that information. You have to be willing to share with Microsoft in order for Cortana to do what she see. They've done a good job with the AI when I'm referring to it as a personification of a human. You have to share with Apple in order for Siri to do what it's supposed to do, and you have to share with Google in order for Google Now to do what it's supposed to do. So you can pick your poison. You can choose Apple, choose Google, choose Microsoft, whoever you trust the most. Or you can decide that you don't trust any of them and you don't want to share that information and you just don't need those features. That's entirely up to you. I actually use all three and I share with all three, so it's whatever. All right, so the next Microsoft thing. I posted a review today. Unfortunately, I didn't get to do the review because I have not yet gotten a Surface Book. I'm supposedly on the list, and hopefully Microsoft will figure out how to get me a Surface Book to review sometime before the Surface Book 2 comes out. But for right now, I've just been sitting on the sidelines. But Rob Enderle, who writes a weekly post for me, does have a review unit of a Surface Book. So he shared his thoughts on it. And again, I don't want to rehash the whole posts. I'll sum up by saying he loves the Surface Book and feels like Microsoft is on par with the Apple and the MacBook in terms of the style and the look and the feel and the quality of that device. So I'm definitely looking forward to getting some hands-on experience with one eventually. And I think that it's the Surface Pro line and the Surface Book excuse me, are they're examples of the improvements Microsoft has made basically by borrowing a page from Apple. I mean, they control the operating system, they control the development of the hardware, they're producing the hardware, they control the whole thing full circle. And when you control the whole thing full circle, you can do more. You can ensure that it lives up to its promise. Whereas when Microsoft is building Windows, but then HP or Dell or Lenovo is building the hardware, then now you're trying to work with another party, and they might cut corners that you wouldn't cut, or different things can happen. And there's pros and cons to that. There's benefits to that in terms of the sheer variety of desktops and laptops and tablets for Windows, because Microsoft works with those OEM partners. But there's also something to be said for the quality of a device when one company controls the whole cycle, and the quality of the experience when Microsoft, which developed Windows and knows exactly what it can do and exactly what the all of its features and capabilities, can develop hardware that capitalizes on those features and capabilities, that really pushes the envelope and shows you what Windows is truly capable of. And I think that's what the Surface line, it does compete with HP and Dell and Lenovo and OEM partners. It does compete on some level, but it, more than competing, it's there to be a showcase. It's there to be the flagship of, this is what's possible. This is the pinnacle of what your Windows 10 experience on a tablet or a 2-in-1 hybrid laptop ought to be. And then everything else can be compared against that. I think Microsoft needs to do a little bit more of that when it comes to the smartphone side of things, because there was a rumor before. I wrote an article earlier, last fall, before the October Windows event. There was a lot of speculation that Microsoft was going to introduce a Surface phone. So basically taking the same sort of polish and look and feel of a Surface tablet, making it into a smartphone. That didn't happen. They introduced a couple new Lumia models. Now that rumor has been sparked again, because this week Microsoft actually acquired the domain surfacephone.com. So, don't have to be Sherlock Holmes. If Microsoft owns surfacephone.com, it seems like Surface Phone is at least a possibility. So, so that rumor's heated up again, and I still think it's a good idea. I think that Microsoft, Lumia, the Nokia Lumia hardware is essentially the only Windows Phone hardware. There's a couple other options, but basically Nokia was the only one really producing Windows phones. And now Microsoft bought Nokia, and Microsoft dropped the Nokia, kept the Lumia, so now you got Microsoft Lumia smartphones. And they're nice. They're not as the aesthetics and the quality are not on par with the iPhone and with like the Samsung Galaxy S6, S6 Edge. So in terms of hardware, Microsoft doesn't really have that flagship quality device that that you covet, and you want to have that Windows Phone device. But they're good. There's nothing wrong with them. In my opinion, where Microsoft needs to change something if they want to compete more in the smartphone market is the UI. Now, I used to appreciate the tiles, not so much because I love the tiles, but I appreciated the fact that Microsoft did something unique, whereas Android is a direct ripoff of iOS and just unapologetically copies iOS and like everything that it does. Microsoft developed its own thing. And I thought that sounded great. But I looked at it some more recently and say, well, okay, between Android and iOS, that's 93% of the mobile market right now, and they have a very similar look and feel. So the way the app icons are, and the way you group app icons into folders, is essentially the same between iOS and Android, and Windows stands alone as being unique. And there's nothing wrong with being unique if it works and if people want it. But I think years of somewhat sad and stagnant sales and smartphone market share indicate that people aren't interested in the tiles, really. I mean, for whatever reason, people are not buying the Windows Phone. Now, it could be the hardware. I mean, if Microsoft makes a Surface Phone and it's a just a gorgeous device that people they want to own that device, maybe that'll work for somewhat. But I really think Microsoft could maintain some of the back end of what they're trying to do with Windows 10 and Windows 10 Continuum and having that unified experience, and just change the tiles to icons. It sounds simple, but I think it would matter. I think people, it would make it easier for someone who's looking at all three, who said, well, I'm going to look at Android, I'm going to look at iPhone, I'm going to look at Windows Phone, or someone who already has an Android or an iPhone. It would make it easier for them to switch if the user experience was more similar. So if all I'm doing is getting a different device and it's on a different platform, but I still know how to place icons on my on my screen and group them into folders and all that stuff because it works the same as iOS and Android, I think that's an advantage that would help Microsoft. Just my 2 cents. So anyway, that's it for this week. So we'll get back on track. We'll start doing these weekly. Let me know what you think of the changes. Let me know what you think of Guinness. Let me know what you think of Cortana, Siri, virtual assistants, Surface Books, Surface phones. So feel free to comment here. Feel free to comment on TechSpective. Have an awesome weekend, and I will talk to you next week.